cow burps, it sounds like kind of a funny subject.
Who came to the party? All right, now shut up.
I'm happy to just get into it.
There you go. There you go. All right, man. Well, definitely good to catch up with you again. The first time we ran into each other, we started fighting about the vegan thing versus the meat eater thing, which
it was friendly.
And that's awesome, man. And that's really awesome. So, we'll give the people a heads up of what you're about, what you're into, your name, where they can contact you.
Sure. My name's N8than. I am a political science major at George Washington University. I'm 21 years old, currently living in Brooklyn, New York, with a friend of mine. Yeah, I'm looking to work in a political field, and I'm vegan and I'm atheist, and I like talking about basically anything. Anybody who wants to have a discussion about an interesting topic, especially where there are areas of disagreement, because there are certain areas where I would say I disagree with a fair amount of people, and so it's always fun to have those discussions. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything particularly special about me. I mean, my mom says I'm special, but I guess that makes me the least special person in the world.
Your mom's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So when getting to the vegan lifestyle, when did you start, or when did you become a vegan? Was there a particular moment? I know my little sister was a vegan from as long as we can remember. Then she stopped, and but she could not eat meat. She would not eat meat. It just wasn't her thing, and she just had no taste for it. But for yourself, when did you start?
Yeah, so it started in high school. I for a long time, even before high school down to when I was young, I would always have difficulty sort of squaring my love for animals with eating meat. But as as it is with most people, it's sort of part of everyday life. It was part of the culture that I grew up in. Eating meat was part of my household culture. Eating meat happened at school, basically everywhere you go.
You gotta eat meat.
Exactly. Everywhere you go, that's the food that's available. So I never loved the idea of eating animals, but it was always something that I did just because that was the food to eat and it was normal. And a lot of the time it's easier to be normal than to sort of change your behavior. And so that's what I did. In high school, I started thinking about it more seriously though. And then there was one point in my junior year when I made a new friend I became friends with like this new kid at school. He was a basketball player. And I love basketball, but I wasn't as good as him. He was on varsity and he was vegetarian. And I was like, all right, I've known for a while now that I don't love the idea of eating meat. But now I'm looking at this guy, bigger than me, stronger than me, succeeding at basketball. If this guy can go without eating meat, then why the hell can't I? So that day, or one day when I was, sitting with him, talking with him afterwards, I was like, all right, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go vegan. And then that night, my dad was cooking lamb kebabs. So you could probably guess I didn't start my new diet until the next day. Did I say vegan? I didn't actually. I decided to go vegetarian that day.
Okay.
So I decided to stop eating meat. I really started the day after. And then about a year or so later, around New Year's 2017, I decided that being vegetarian wasn't enough and that I wanted to go vegan. And so being vegan was my New Year's resolution for 2017. It's basically, I think, the only New Year's resolution that I've ever kept. Although I was cheating a little bit at the beginning because the dining hall at my school made these amazing cookies. And so every day I would pass by and I was like, yeah, I guess I could, swipe a cookie.
It's only a cookie, you know. It's only a cookie.
Just a cookie, just a cookie. Yeah, so that lasted for a little while, but eventually I just went full on, decided, hey, this is a decision that I've made for myself and I'm going to commit to it. And ever since then, I haven't intentionally eaten meat. As I'm sure pretty much every other vegan, I'm sure I've consumed some amount of meat and dairy unintentionally. But yeah, ever since then, I've not eaten any meat or dairy or eggs intentionally. And the reason that I went vegetarian first off is because there's this notion that eating meat itself is, I guess, less ethical than just eating dairy and eggs, because dairy isn't a dead animal and eggs isn't a dead animal, at least eggs, most of which are unfertilized, that are produced in the egg industry. And so I was able to rationalize it by saying, oh yeah, well, I'm going to stop eating meat, but I could still eat dairy and eggs because, dairy is not actually, dead cow. It's just some milk and, it's harmless, right? I was always told that, cows needed to be milked in order to survive. And I was like, all right, I'm helping out cows, and these eggs are not fertilized, so they would never grow into chickens anyway. And plus, a lot of my diet, was eggs. I was eating eggs every morning. That was where I was getting protein. Dairy, I love dairy, love milk, love cheese, so originally, that was my mindset when I first decided to change my diet. But eventually I learned that, dairy production and egg production is really not any less or not any more ethical than meat production. And in fact, it's all interrelated. And so I decided that the only decision that I would be able to live with on a moral level was becoming vegan. And then on top of it, I learned about how a plant-based lifestyle is better for the environment, which just adds to the argument for plant-based diet. And so all this confluence of factors has led me to the place I am today, where this is maybe my most strongly held belief. And I have a fair amount of strongly held beliefs. So yeah, it's definitely it's one of the most sort of important things I value about myself, that I've been able to abide by my moral compass in this sense. And so that's where I am.
I kind of told you before, like I tried to be a vegan or a vegetarian or whatever, whatever at the time. There wasn't many options. And I'm going back to like 99, like 97, 98 in that era. And there wasn't enough stuff out there to keep me as interested. Like I'm a butcher by trade. So to me it was, I know, which is makes you shriek in your skin, I'm sure. But that's what I did. I grew up doing that, and that just was my lifestyle. It's how I made money and whatever. But I was eating all the Boku burgers, the Morningstar stuff, and mushroom caps like you've never seen. I'm eating all this stuff, and there was no substitute for a cheeseburger. That was the one thing, like that. I mean, I tried everything, and I was like, then I said, I went from not eating like any meat at all to start eating turkey burgers, because I was like, I'll play with that. I'll eat a turkey burger, but then I'm putting 2 pieces of cheese on it. I'm seasoning it up ridiculously. One burger is now is like 38,000 calories. Like, I'm like, what am I doing to myself? And that's what kind of got me off of it. But I know some of the one of the girls I used to work with, she was like super vegan now, and she shows me the most horrific things on the internet of things. I mean, it's almost like people are poachers, like destroying animals. Like but there's no need for that. Beating up and doing that side of it is just, even the butchers aren't into that part. That's just people like mutilating pigs and all that stuff. That's not cool. But like, the way I feel is that when animals that are bred for consumption, I feel is different than the abuse side of things. If it's bred, it's not a pet. You know what I'm saying? Like some people say, well, would you eat your dog? Well, people do eat dogs, in certain cultures and certain places. My girlfriend's Vietnamese. In Vietnam, they eat dogs, but it's not their pet dog. It's just, whatever. But that's just how I feel. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't speak for everybody, but, I do love my meat, but then it's like, you do see the health things, certain health issues, that can be contributed to some meat intake and stuff like that. So then it's like, now I kind of understand why somebody would just wean themselves away from it for health reasons. Compassion for animals is another thing. I know a lot of people who who become vegans, their love for animals and nature and the environment is so strong that, I mean, hey, it makes sense. I can dig that. You know, I wish mine was more so. I have a dog. I love my dog, you know, but and I don't plan on ever eating my dog. But you know, I can understand where like how you feel towards animals. You know, it's stronger. So it would make sense. Like I'm not gonna, you know, like I wouldn't eat my friends. You know,
Yeah.
I love my friends and family. I'm not gonna eat them. So I can see why. You know, there's a stronger connection. Where
Yeah.
some like me, it's like not as much. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So can I ask you, is the reason that you do eat meat, is it just because of taste? Just because you like the taste?
You know, it's really funny. I don't have taste.
You don't have taste.
I don't have taste. So I got my tongue pierced in 97, around 97. And I lost, they botched something up and I lost taste. So everything for me, like, it's texture. When I did, and I got my tongue pierced before I tried the vegan thing, and like, you know, eat more clean. Uh, it was the texture of a cheeseburger. Like I
Mhm.
tried all like the seitan stuff and the tofu burger, like everything you could possibly do, but nothing had that same like that same snap or texture, and it was that because like the tofu wings and stuff like that, well,
Sure.
they were delicious. It tastes like boneless buffalo wings. It didn't taste any different to me or felt any different, but it
Mhm.
was just a burger. You
Yeah.
know, the taste of meat, you know, like the smell of it is amazing. Like I love the smell of it, you know. But
Mhm.
like I could honestly, I could probably go off and not eat. Like I eat a lot of fish too, you know, and I guess to the degree it is, you know, I eat fish because I'm like, oh, it's got to be healthier. If I eat some fish today, I'm doing better for myself than if I ate meat. But you know, some of it is probably my own ignorance because I only know so much because you know I just kind of stay in my little world.
Yeah. So yeah, there's actually there's a lot of different interesting stuff to sort of talk about in what you just said. What you're talking about, how like you don't have any taste but you have texture. I definitely want to talk about that a little later on. But if we could just go back to when you were talking about how basically animal abuse is not cool, right?
But
And how you're saying like farming animals is one thing and raising them for consumption is one thing, but abuse is not cool. Would you say that's like a fair summary of what you said?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So essentially there is no difference. 99%, well over 99% of the meat consumed in the United States and about 90% of meat consumed globally is factory farm meat. And what does that mean? That means that, yeah, it's animals raised for consumption, kept indoors, basically in factory like buildings, right? Kept in ultra confined spaces, in order to, and in order to reduce the cost, for the producers. They take basically a lot of measures that are harmful to animals to keep their costs down. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that abuse is not sort of abuse is not like sort of this extra like thing that can happen. Like abuse is the system. Like the system of how we raise animals in the United States, it's inherently abusive. Um, you have animals who are kept, like I said, in very, very confined spaces, um, mutilating, limbs. I'm sure you've seen videos, right? You said of maybe pig tails being cut off or cow's tails being cut off.
right.
That's not just like a few rogue actors. That's normal business. That's how these businesses operate every day, right? And then if you see these labels like, cage free, right? Sometimes you'll see cage free eggs and you'll think, oh, that's a little more humane. Maybe that's a little better than normal, chickens being raised for eggs. But even something like that, it really isn't that much better. Normally, chickens are kept in these really small cages, like 3 or 4 chickens in a very small cage. And cage free basically just means that rather than each, 3 or 4 chickens in their little cages, it's just, a million chickens on the floor. And
Right.
so they're still cutting the beaks off these chickens, and beaks have thousands and thousands of nerve endings. Why do they cut the beaks off? Because chickens can get really, aggressive and stressed out because they're living their entire life in confined spaces, and they'll hurt each other. And so farmers cut off beaks, so the chickens won't hurt each other. And you know, basically what I'm trying to say is, like I said, you know, abuse is the system. Like the current apparatus of like animal agriculture, it 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 wouldn't exist the way it does today without abuse. And I mean, maybe we can debate on what abuse is, and I would guess that my standard for abuse is probably higher than yours, but I would imagine that any rational person would agree that, you know, confining animals in very, very tight spaces, you know, restricting their access to sunlight or, you know, real ground, that's abuse. And then if you add everything on top of it, you know, mutilating body parts of these animals, that's abuse. They're also neglect. Do you think these animals are getting veterinary treatment? No, because it's not beneficial to the industry to care for these animals, right? Another sort of byproduct of animals, thousands of animals being kept in very confined spaces, is also disease, right? I mean, if we're in the middle of a pandemic right now, if you want to talk about the perfect place for a disease to spread, anybody talking about like the ideal condition for a virus to spread, they'd basically be describing a factory farm. And so there's incredible abuse. It's an incredibly unclean, unsanitary place, and so that leads to you know, very, very high usage of antibiotics, right? As I'm sure you know, right? And antibiotics, I mean, they're not healthy for humans to eat, right? And in addition, using tons and tons of antibiotics also, you know, further increases our sort of potential to be affected by really deadly bacteria who have built up immunity to these antibiotics because they're being abused in order to save these companies money in the short term, right? And I think maybe the most unbelievable part about it is that it's not only as if these companies are just, you know, operating as any other business. I mean, these businesses are being subsidized very heavily by our federal government. So it's not only a business sort of, you know, doing its private thing. I mean, taxpayer dollars are going towards these industries. And then when you account for the fact that animal agriculture has a more substantial greenhouse effect than all of the transportation in the entire world. I don't know if you know this, but every airplane, every car, every train, every ship cumulatively have a smaller greenhouse effect than animal agriculture, right? And so when people talk about sort of rollout of the Green New Deal proposal a couple years ago, I guess that was already, and you know, people were laughing at, you know, some, I don't think it was actually a provision, but maybe some slight suggestion that, you know, Americans would need to eat fewer hamburgers, right? Everybody's laughing at that, right? Well, to be fair, yeah, you know, cow burps, it sounds like kind of a funny subject, but at the end of the day, these millions and millions of cows that we are raising to eat are producing tons and tons of methane, which is a much stronger greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide is, right? So there are tons of debates about, you know, fuel efficiency standards, right? And maybe imposing a carbon tax and things like that to reduce emissions, right? But nobody's talking about this one giant industry, which is the third largest producer of greenhouse gases. And so even if you don't care about the moral aspect whatsoever, which is not a position that I can empathize with, but if all you care about is, you know, human flourishing, then you should still advocate for you know, a plant-based diet and the reduction of the production of animal products in the United States and around the world because of the greenhouse effect, which isn't good for anybody. I mean, tons and tons of deforestation as well. I mean, I'm sure you've heard about deforestation in the Amazon, right? They're cutting down, you know, this rainforest to make room for cattle to graze. And so they're cutting down a huge carbon sink, right? Because huge rainforests pull, you know, carbon out of the atmosphere, right? Which is a good thing, right? We're getting rid of that, and then on that land, we're basically replacing, these trees that help us with, in terms of, carbon in the atmosphere. We're replacing them with, these machines, if you want to, speak in, strictly sort of economic terms. A cow is basically a methane emitting machine, right? And so it's not just about the animals, right? It's the meat industry itself is incredibly harmful, to our own species and to our planet. And of course, we're not going to flourish if our planet's not flourishing. And so, yeah, I could go on and on, but
no, I love it. You're very well versed and knowledge in what you're talking about. Some of the people that,
and I invite you to, if I'm wrong, I want to know it. I did, research just to brush up, on my information, so I didn't come out spitting nonsense.
No, but you know what I love though, the fact that, whether everything is 100%, people, if they're listening to this, they can research on their own. That's, which is a beautiful thing. You can do that. But you didn't come to me with the same thing you hear. Oh, well, our teeth are, and you can't bite through a lion. Like, of course, I can't bite through a lion. The lion's bigger than me. Like, because they always say about the IT, though, the canines, we're made to eat meat because we have these teeth. But I mean, really, we can't bite through fur or animal. It's not gonna. I can't even bite through a fish. But our jaws aren't
with apples. They're helpful with apples.
Yeah, well, a nice beefy apple. But no, I appreciate the fact that you have you came at it from an intellectual point of view. Like this is you research this, you understand and know the benefits of, like, the fact that you said, all right, well, forget the animal part. What about the human being part?
Yeah.
Now every time I eat a steak, I'm going to be thinking about a cow farting, ruining the environment. Which is fine, which is now I understand, about the methane. Like, all right, so that does make sense. Probably won't stop me from eating steak and burgers, but I'm going to be thinking about that every time I do eat something. Now,
so why won't it stop you from eating steak and burgers?
Because I love it, man. I know it's ignorantly said, but I just, I love it. But I may tone down. I can give you that promise.
So you're basically saying you loving steak is enough justification for you to eat steak, right?
Right.
So therefore, doesn't that suggest that liking to do anything is justification to do anything, right?
No, I believe me, I can understand what you're saying.
No, I mean, let me say, if I love, I guess we can, I mean, well, you already, talked about how, the dog thing, so I guess I won't go there. But if I loved, I don't know, destroying cars, right?
Right.
Would that therefore like give me like the inherent right to destroy my neighbor's car? Like, would that be justified? Like, would that be okay? Like, oh, okay, he likes destroying cars, so yeah, it's totally fine that he did that.
But I will look at that more like, all right, if the guy said you can do it, like if somebody packages meat for me to purchase, I'm gonna do it. If somebody said, hey, this car is for you to bust up on, then we can do it. If it's for that, we're crossing, splitting hairs and crossing lines here, because you can go either way. But I don't know. It is one of those. I get it. Believe me, because I tried it. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, okay. Well, let's say I love killing dogs, right? Does that give me justification to enter your house and kill your dog?
No, that's not. But if you like dogs and it was a place that was selling dogs to eat, yeah, that's have at it.
So what about a stray dog? If I like killing dogs, does that inherently make it okay for me to kill a stray dog?
To eat it?
Right? A stray dog.
If you were gonna kill it to eat it?
No, not just to kill it.
If it's just your thing, well, I mean, if you were just a murderer, well, that's I think that's a little different than just, well, because that's just bloodlust. That's not, you're doing it for, the reason you're doing it, it's not the proper thing to do. There's no gain out of it. That's just a fueling fire and anger type thing.
So,
but if you were eating it, I mean, that's different. I mean, that's,
okay.
I mean, they clear out trees to put apartments anywhere we lived. There was something else that was here in the past. Trees, bushes, groundhogs were living here, whatever, was living here. But for us humans to exist, we had to live in something. So that area had to be cleared for us. Now I'm not saying clear everything, get rid of the rainforest for apartments, but we have to live somewhere. You know what I'm saying? There is it's not just to clear it out, just have a space for nothing.
Yeah. I think most people, who share my views, the general approach is to reduce any unnecessary harm, right?
Right.
Now, I think like if we accept that humans have the right to develop in a way that can sustain their population, then that would imply that there is some amount of harm that we are willing to do in order to accomplish our goals, right? And so I'm not a person who's ever going to make the case that it's possible or even reasonable or even possible, to expect that we can reduce all of the harm that we cause, right? But I think what we can do is reduce the unnecessary harm as much as we possibly can.
I
And
agree with you.
so when talking about you eating the steak because you like it, well, is you liking steak more important than the life of that cow? Like, is it necessary to kill that cow?
Like I said, if the cow was just if it was somebody's pet cow, different. But that's the thing. I look at it differently. If it was bred for consumption, the cow doesn't know enough. It's not like, yeah, I was once free and now they just shackle me up and down or eat me. He doesn't know anything beyond those walls. So he was only bred for us to eat. A lion eats meat, a tiger eats meat, a walrus eats meat. They're animal. We're just a higher elevated animal.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay. Yeah.
and we can do more because we are just higher elevated. But if you jumped in the water and the shark bit you, what's the debate there? It's an
Yeah.
animal. He's going to eat another animal.
Yeah. Listen. I'm never gonna argue that a lion killing a gazelle in order to eat it is unethical, right? And that's for two reasons. Number one, um, it goes back to that necessity question, right? For a lion, right? Any animal can be, or any like living being can be expected to take any necessary step in order to continue surviving, right? Any living being has that prerogative. Would you agree?
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And we know, I mean, based on the biology of a lion, and the makeup of their ecosystems and how they behave in order to survive, we know conclusively that this is the behavior that they must pursue in order to continue surviving, right? So
Right.
that's point one, why I don't have a problem with lions killing gazelles, right? Number two is that, as far as we can tell, lions and other animals don't have the capacity for moral reasoning that we do, right?
Right.
Now, I suppose I mean, we can't disprove that other animals cannot, um, you know, engage in moral reasoning, but we know that we can, and we haven't seen conclusive evidence that other animals can, right? And so we can't reasonably expect animals to behave in what we would consider to be moral ways, because we haven't seen evidence that that's something that they're capable of, right? But that is something that human beings are capable of. Would you agree?
We can think. We can rationalize. We have
Yeah.
different
Yeah,
types of compassion.
yeah, like we can come to certain conclusions, in terms of what is moral and what is not moral. Would you agree with that? Yeah.
You're
So
definitely right. Yeah, that's understandable.
yeah, so that's why I would consider humans eating meat different than a lion eating meat, because number one, we know for a fact that lions need to do that in order to survive. And humans do not need to eat meat in order to survive. Number two, as far as we can tell, lions do not have a capacity for moral reasoning, and human beings do have the capacity for moral reasoning, right? So if we go back to the question of, why is it okay to eat the steak? Um, I think we need to consider those two questions. Is it necessary for us to eat that steak in order to live? And number two, would sound moral reasoning lead us to a conclusion that it is acceptable or necessary to do so, right? And I think like one important factor to consider is also the interest of the cow, right? Because when we're talking about, beings that are going to be, affected by this decision, right? It's not just you, the human, right? It's also the cow. And even though that cow may be bred for the purpose of consumption, right? That has to do with the human beings that bred that cow, right? That has nothing to do with the cow itself, right?
Right.
Would you agree with
Right.
that? Yeah. And
Right.
so I think when we're thinking about, you know, the consequences of this action of eating a steak, it's not just about why is that cow alive, right? Because we can answer why that cow is alive because it was bred to alive, right? Because it was bred to be alive. But the question we need to answer is it acceptable? Is it acceptable for us to end that cow's life, right? Does that cow have an interest in living? Does that cow have the ability to suffer, right? Will killing that cow in order to eat it have more of a positive impact on us than it has a negative impact on the cow? And so I'm just wondering what your
Well, it's
thoughts are.
definitely negative to the cow because he's going to be eaten. Um, but like I said, it is that weird spot. To me, it's food. You know what I'm saying? Like to me, it's strictly food. It's nothing is done up to that point was worth anything. And I'm just saying, wasn't constructive, wasn't creative, wasn't this is our what is it? Like in Charlotte's Web, all those animals, but then the pig ended up being the one that was like super special. Like,
Sure.
say, hey, if that's if that's the odd case, that cow was so special. All right, cool, that's fine for that cow. But the other ones, they're going to be eaten. They're going to be, chops and kebabs. That's what that one is going to be. That's what his purpose is. His purpose was to be created to be eaten. How I feel, and a lot of the people who eat meat feel the same way. Like I don't have a connection with a cow that's just, has no person. It's not has no personality. A dog that will sit on your lap because he loves you to death. What I'm saying? Yeah, that's it. You'd be ashamed of yourself if you ate somebody's pet. But if somebody's, if it was a cow that was just, hey, this is such and such farms, we breed cows that are going to be steaks on tables. That's it. That's it. Should it be taken care of? Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it, I mean, like, I know this sounds weird. Do I care if this cow didn't go for a long walk today? I really don't care. I'm just saying, not to say I don't care, but it's not that important to me to be thinking about that. I'm going to see how that cow is going to feel in my stomach, on a plate, on a skillet, whatever it is. That's just how, because I'm a meat eater.
Yeah,
That's how I look at things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
So
understand.
it's like you said about the kebabs. Well, once that smell starts cooking up, you're like, man, that is all right there. Now I've had other food that was vegan or wholesome good food that was just as good. I'm not saying it's not, but there were that steak or that those meatballs or that pork chop is delicious. I love it. I
Okay.
I can't. I don't think I'll ever stop eating it. There may be some things that I may change every now and again. Like I do eat a lot of my daughter eats all these. She's a vegan, which is funny too. My 24-year-old, she's 25 rather, but she eats a lot of vegan, all this stuff, these burgers and all that stuff. And then I eat some of that stuff too, and it's just fine. It's just not the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, let me ask you. This may sound extreme for a bit, but
Not be extreme.
Okay, fine. I'll be extreme. All right. So let's replace a cow with a human. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you eat it?
Would I eat no, I'm not gonna eat a human being. Well,
Oh, well, no, hold on.
if no, well,
Nate, hold on. Can I finish my question?
yeah.
Let's talk about a human, right? Just
Okay.
one human being, right? Never accomplished anything, right? Never exhibited, any amount of intelligence, right? Basically doesn't do anything at all. And the reason that this human was bred, quote unquote, right? Let's say that the two parents of this human, gave birth to it for the express purpose of eating it, right? And this human being, isn't special or what anything like Wilbur the pig. And listen, I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that have tasted human and think it's pretty good and would like to have it again. What's wrong with eating the human?
Well, I think to me, Now that becomes more of a moral issue. It's my alike. That's a human being like I am. You know, like that's a little, you know, the cannibal thing. That's you know, to me, but that's
Yeah.
another human being that has more of a purpose.
But what about to some person who doesn't care? Eating a human is the same thing as eating a cow. Is it acceptable for that person?
Well, if you take a lot of it away and say it's just meat, then yeah, it's just meat. A human being is meat, just like a cow, a dog, or a fish, or whatever. It's meat.
Okay,
you know,
so
on that level. But the intelligence of a human being and what a human being can produce and can become is a little bit different than what a cow is going to do or produce.
But
So by the food chain, but if you look at the evolution chain and the food chain,
sure.
What's a cow? At a certain point, a cow doesn't do anything. It doesn't produce enough to make it higher on the food chain. A fish, you know, it does. They do wonderful things in their realm, but you take them out of the, you know, like, all right, yeah, if we jump in the water, we can swim a little bit, but it can't produce. It can't think like we do. Theirs is more reaction and instinct.
Well, why is that relevant? Like, I'm going to ask, because basically what I think of whether or not something is moral, I don't think it comes down to intelligence or the ability for something to produce, right? I think of, does this, you know, will my decision cause suffering, right? Do these animals suffer, right? Because I think that suffering is a relevant question to morality, right? Because when we're talking about morality, right, we're talking about well-being, we're talking about reducing harm, increasing pleasure, right? And so I think, you know, the ability to suffer is a directly relevant component of what, you know, should be a moral calculation. Whereas I don't think that intelligence is relevant whatsoever, right? The intelligence of a being, as far as I can tell, does not, like, it's not relevant, because if a being is not intelligent but it can still suffer, then you're still causing harm, right? It's not as though, you know, I don't think we should be thinking about this, oh well, if I eat this human is then not going to go on to use its talents to cure cancer, and therefore I'm not going to eat this human so that later in life it could use its intelligence to do whatever. No, the reason that I wouldn't kill and eat a human is because I don't want to cause harm to a being that has the ability to suffer, right? And as far as we know, cows and pigs and at least other mammals, right, which are biologically way more similar to us than they are different, right? When we talk about comparing a human being and a cow to a bunch of human beings, a cow seems really different to us, right? But in terms of sort of a more grand biological, you know, sort of like onlook, like looking at things from, you know, type biological sense, a cow and a human are way more similar than we are different, right? And so we know, you know, distinctly how much of a capacity that we have to suffer, right? And by the same token, we know that cows and pigs and sheep and goats and dogs and cats all have the ability to suffer, right? And so I think that is the relevant moral question, is the decision that I'm going to make going to cause suffering, and is the benefit that I would receive from making that decision, does that benefit outweigh the suffering, right? And so I think in some cases that would be true, right? If I was starving, right? If we want to go to like a really extreme example, if I'm starving and I need to eat this cow in order to, you know, get the necessary nutrition in order to survive, then I'll do it, because at that point the benefit of killing the cow outweighs the cost of killing the cow, right? Because remember earlier we were talking about how, you know, any animal can be expected to take any necessary step in order to ensure its own survival, right? And so that's what I would be doing in that circumstance, right? But if we're at another situation where, you know, I'm just living my life, whatever, I'm not in any sort of imminent danger, and I'm hungry, and I have one option of killing a cow, which you said it itself, it causes, you know, essentially an infinite amount of harm to a cow. I mean, it ends its life, right? Which is about as much harm, you know, you're taking away its animal's right to be alive, right? And if any animal has a right to anything, or let's say, but like I think like the most basic human right I would consider is the right to life and the right to be free from harm, right? If you could say, I could either have the right to vote or the right to be free from harm and like live, right? Then I think you would prefer that the second one, right? And so,
Absolutely.
yeah.
No
And so
question.
if I'm in a situation where I do have the option of killing that cow, right? And I'll gain some small benefit from enjoying the meal, or I could eat a plant-based meal, which would give me, let's even say it's not as much benefit, right? Let's say that every meal that contains meat is more delicious than any meal that doesn't contain meat, right? Just for argument's sake.
Right.
Is the difference in like pleasure that I gain from eating one salad versus eating a burger, right? Is that difference, right? That difference basically in the pleasure I get from eating each meal. Does that offset the immense harm, the immense moral harm that I've done by taking away the life of an animal that by all measures exhibited behavior that would suggest that it has as much of a desire to live as you or I do? Is that an acceptable trade-off to make? And in my opinion, the answer is no, right? And
And
I think one thing that sort of bolsters that argument is that, I mean, you've said, 10 or 15 minutes ago, you said that you've had some vegan meals that are just as good as meat meals that you've had, right? Did you?
absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And so you're basically saying there that not only like there isn't even this difference, right? The difference from meal to meal for you between eating a meat meal and eating a plant-based meal can literally be no difference whatsoever, right? And so if there's literally no external benefit for you, even in terms of just eating a meal that you enjoy slightly more, is that decision to take away the life of that cow justified? And I'd love to hear your response.
I mean, it's very pertinent information what you're saying. Look, you painted a very, very beautiful picture. Um, the best way that I could even answer that is, I do enjoy my meat. Like all the vegan stuff that I've eaten, and all the anything in that, like the seitan stuff and all, like I've tried everything and it's good. And I can't lie. Mushroom burgers, bean burgers, it's great. But there's no substitute for the things that I really want. For instance, when I was trying to eat some of the stuff that was like the Beyond Burgers, not like some of the ones I put on the grill, it doesn't have the same texture. Even with that, it's not the same texture, and it just doesn't do it. Whereas
Sure.
that steak is just on point. A1 sauce on a steak, a burger, it's what I'm into, and I love it. And I cherish the fact that there's so many different meats out there for me to consume. The moral part of it, all right, does something have to die for me to have it on my, like, does something have to be taken out of existence for me to have it on my plate and enjoy it? Yeah, that does get dicey. Yeah, I don't want no harm on anything. I'm not that type of person, but it is food.
I mean, it's not just dicey. I mean, it's a literal life or death question, right?
Right.
I
But
mean,
it's a food, like for me, I enjoy the food. I benefit. I feel good when I eat it. It tastes delicious. Smells delicious. It's the texture. Like this, all those benefits that I get from it. Like
yeah,
when I was eating a lot of what was it I mean, like, just I was eating salads and like all this, so much stuff to try to counterbalance what I wasn't getting from protein and the iron and stuff that I wasn't getting from meat. So I'm like, well, I can't sustain this. And it's getting really expensive to eat like that. Whereas if I just got a steak, I got most of the stuff that I needed from that. I was in the gym and I was doing all that, so I saw the benefits of it, but it still didn't outweigh my needs. And I'll even say selfishly, because I just had it in my head, this is what I wanted. Yeah, if I would have kept it out, yeah, I would have been fine. But this is me speaking personally. I enjoy it,
yeah.
and I
So,
continue to eat it.
yeah. So basically, you're arguing that, and listen, I don't want to sound disrespectful, but
No, I want you
you're,
to talk to me. I
yeah,
want you to be
yeah,
who you are.
yeah,
Don't
yeah.
you know?
So you're basically saying that your personal preference on a meal-to-meal basis outweighs the value of a life of these sentient creatures who have an express ability to suffer. That's essentially what you're arguing, right?
Pretty much. And in a nutshell, I guess you could say that.
Mhm.
You
And
know,
so basically my question is, why is why does just because you're not even making the case that it's necessary to live a healthy life. And I'm actually glad that you're making that case, because it's verifiably, conclusively incorrect. So I do sort of respect that you're making, sort of the only case you can, which is that you do know for a fact that what your personal preferences are. And so I like how you are sticking to just what you know. But essentially, you're arguing that your personal preference outweighs the life of another animal. But once again, it seems like before that you disagreed with me, or you disagreed with the notion that personal preference can be a justification for anything. So if personal preference is justification to kill a sentient being that it is 100% not necessary to kill, right? Because it's just personal preference, right? It's not necessity, just personal preference. So what can we not justify just because of personal preference?
Well, but in terms of food, like this is like sticking with food, like you know what I'm saying, because if it gets too loose, look, I want to sell Coke. You know what I'm saying. People want to buy Coke. I want to sell Coke. I'm just supplying the demand at that. People make food. People make meat. Meat's been around as consumed forever.
Yeah.
As far back as we can look, people have been eating meat.
Yeah.
I'm no different than the people who choose to enjoy it, as opposed to the people who don't want to eat it. Animals, have been eaten forever. And sometimes when I talk to certain people who are vegans, vegetarians, whatever the case may be, or whatever, their choices are, their debate is, what is it? When I say, well, we're all animals, then it changes. Well, if a lion can eat an antelope, I can't eat a cow. But we are all animals. And then the debate turns, well, but no, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Like if they can do it and they're animals, well, why can't I do it? Because technically we are animals.
So you are arguing that those are basically the same thing.
As far as what?
So like, are you arguing? Wait, so are you arguing that a lion eating a gazelle is the same thing as a human eating a steak?
Eating essentially, yeah. But there are differences because they have no other options. They can't cook. Yeah. It is different. Yeah, I can. There's other things that I can eat.
Yeah,
and I've done that.
Yeah,
but I choose to eat meat.
Yeah, but
I make a decision to do that because I enjoy it more than the other things that I can just eat. Other things, but I choose to eat meat more because I enjoy it. It is rather delicious on my palate. So I'm gonna continue. I do it for that purpose because it's delicious to me. And will I die if I don't eat a steak? Probably not. If I don't eat a piece of chicken, I probably won't die. There's other things. There's other substitutes. An animal doesn't really have other substitutes. I'm sure I won't.
You'll probably be better for it. I mean, your risk of heart disease would go down if you stopped eating meat. Your life expectancy would go up. And I mean, I don't have all the adverse side effects of meat. But not only would you not die, it's more than likely that your physical condition would actually improve. Now, of course, it depends on the actual quality of food that you're purchasing and consuming. Because, of course, unhealthy vegan food is just as bad for you as unhealthy non-vegan food, right?
Right.
Often, a lot of times when people, because people will also come up with the argument that, oh, well, being vegan is just too expensive, and so it's not fair for poor people to be expected to be vegan, right? Because it's expensive, right? But there are two really important sort of components to that. Number one is, it's not that vegan food is expensive, right? It's that healthy food is expensive, right? And so poor people are eating cheap non-vegan food because it's unhealthy, right? It's not as if vegan food would be inherently more expensive than non-vegan food, right? It's just that, if a vegan is eating healthy food and a non-vegan is eating unhealthy food, you can point to the vegan and say, oh, wow, look, you're spending so much more money on your food. Not everybody has the privilege to do that, right? But no, it's about, healthy food. And it's really unfortunate, right, that, healthy, organic food is more expensive than not healthy, processed, genetically modified food. And
garbage.
I'm not totally against. Exactly. But so I think people do, generally not understand that dynamic because, I'd imagine that the average vegan is probably purchasing more expensive food than the average non-vegan, but that's because they're purchasing healthier food, not just because it's vegan, right?
Right.
And I can't remember what the second thing was.
It's all right.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't. Oh, okay. Yeah. And then shit, I forgot. I forgot.
Now, do you ever miss it? Do you ever miss meat? Like, do you ever think like, since it's been a few years now that you've been hardcore with it,
Yeah.
do you ever miss it? Do you ever think about it?
That's a good question. Yes, and I would say like yes and no.
Okay.
Because there are some things, and I'll just expand it to just animal product derived foods.
Right.
Like there are some things that there really aren't the best replacements for. Ice cream is one where there is no vegan replacement for ice cream that tastes as good as ice cream, I'll just say.
Right.
But in terms of actual meat, no, I don't miss it whatsoever because to be quite frank, meat disgusts me. And so when I smell it, I used to love the smell of bacon, right? I was living at my aunt's house for a while during quarantine, and sometimes she would make bacon, and I would, walk into the kitchen and smell bacon. And 4 or 5 years ago, I would have loved it, right? But I mean, I'm literally repulsed by the smell. I'm repulsed by
bacon. Come on, man. Bacon is the best smell. I wish I had an incense of bacon right now.
Listen, I'm not saying that it literally smells like garbage, right? It's not like I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is just like when I smell it, my brain does not connect that smell to a pleasant sensation, right?
Right. I got you.
Like your brain, right, connects the smell of bacon to like a really pleasant sensation, which is eating bacon, right?
Right.
When I smell bacon, literally all I can think about, and it's not even something that I control anymore, but literally all I think about when I'm smelling bacon is baby pigs being separated from their mothers and having their tails cut off and being slammed against factory floors and slaughtered so that my aunt could purchase this bacon and eat it and make it for her kids or whatever. So that's the connection that my brain makes, right? And so I can physically look at a steak that looks like it tastes good, but that's not the primary association.
A lot of association, so you see it's a connection.
Yeah, it's like I can't even help it. I'm just like,
right.
It doesn't like the physical sensation of smelling it isn't itself like a bad sensation, but it just makes me sort of physically or sort of like viscerally disgusted.
Right. Which makes sense. I mean, honestly, I could see why. I could see why.
I mean,
my friend Sabrina that I work with, same thing. Every day she would come in with like showing these slaughterhouses, and I'm like, stop looking at this stuff. If it's making you sick, stop looking at it. Just don't eat it. Don't deal with it. Like just don't worry about it. I mean, not saying don't worry about it, but you're putting this in your head so much. Like she would actually get into arguments with customers that had real fur in their jackets. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. That's their decision. You're looking at a whole different angle. Like you're looking at that fur on their jacket, and you're taking it to a whole nother thing. It's like, we have that freeness. As human beings in the country we live in, we have some freenesses that some places don't have and can't have, or whatever the case may be. So, but you can't be mad at them. You know what I'm saying? But she was the kind of person. She was one of the ones that trying to force feed veganism to everybody. Like, no, it's I appreciate when somebody loves what they love. I have a lot of friends that are Muslims and whatever, all different walks of life, and everybody brings something great to the table, diet wise or whatever the case may be, which is beautiful. We aren't the same, but when it's like being pushed on you, like, look, I don't push eating meat on you, don't push not eating it on me, like.
Yeah, well, I definitely understand the sentiment, and I do understand how that can be frustrating. And to be honest, I think once again, I'm going to be pretty frank. I think the reason that frustrates you is because you in the back of your mind, or maybe I'm not going to speak for you, but I think for a lot of folks who will be frustrated by that is because they know in the back of they know in the back of their mind that that person is actually right, because if somebody, has a some problem with something that I'm doing, right, but I don't myself see, and I guess, this is personal, experience, but if somebody has some issue with something I'm doing, but I don't myself recognize any issue with it, then I'm not going to be, frustrated at that person for pointing it out. I'm just, going to say, well, like, listen, they're just plain wrong. They don't have um, a good understanding of this.
Right.
I think, people getting mad, like if you're, getting frustrated at her for, showing you these videos of factory farming, well, all she's doing is showing you the process that's delivering you your food, right?
Well, the thing is, she's showing it to me. It doesn't
Yeah.
bother me. I know what I did it for years. I know it all about that, a lot of that stuff. But it's like in her head, it's driving her crazy. So I would tell her, stop looking at it. You're watching this, and your whole day is shot every single day, and you're going deeper and deeper into the web and looking at worse and worse things, and the whole day you're shot because you're thinking about what you watched this morning. Stop. You know what it is. You know what it is. Like it's if you don't like something, just don't deal with it. But you don't have to put it on anybody else.
Isn't that just cognitive dissonance?
Well, by pushing it on, like
no, I'm saying that basically, like out of sight, out of mind, right?
To a degree. I mean, I'm saying, but if you know something bothers you,
yeah,
why would you keep going at it?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? I don't do drugs, so I don't put myself in I don't. I just don't put myself around it, so it's not a problem for me because I just don't deal with it. It has nothing to do with me.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Crack, it's nothing that I deal with. So I'm not going to look at videos of people smoking crack. Like I know enough that I'm not going to do it. You know what I'm saying? What's that?
Yeah, well, I think that where she's coming from is that, listen, obviously these are very, disturbing images, right, that are coming out of factory farms.
Right.
But I think the reason that she is watching it and wants other people to watch it as well is because it's not like it's something that's like incredibly relevant and important for people to know, right? Because it's possible to be totally disconnected from crack, right? And you can recognize, all of the damage that crack has done to communities, and you could recognize that the United States government, had a big hand in basically in number one, that crack getting into these communities in the first place, and then incarcerating, millions of people, majority of them being people of color, destroying communities, right?
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to like I think if you don't want to like focus on, or sort of like, it is possible to be separated from that to a degree where these images, these videos of animals being abused, this is directly relevant to what everybody is putting on their plate basically every single day, right? And so I think that even if it's disturbing, it's still important information to know. And I think like that is something that every person who's ever eaten meat, I think shouldn't be forced, but I think it would be a good thing for everybody to be exposed to those videos, right? And so listen, I'll ask you, if you had to, the way that those people were treating those animals, right? If you had to treat if every time you wanted a steak, you had to do what they were doing to those animals, would you do it?
No, well, the difference with that, a lot of that stuff is abuse, because it doesn't take all that. What they're doing is not. A lot of those places get fined because that's not how you're supposed to do things. There's a wrong way and there's a right way, but what's always shown is the most horrific side of things. Slaughtering a cow doesn't. You don't have to beat it up.
The horrific side of things, it's like that is the thing. Like it's not as if like it's just a very small point. No, abuse is the system. It's not
like for a cow. Like because I've seen some of them when they're beating them up and they're hitting them. You don't have to do that to kill a cow. But a lot of places they gas it and it's done. Or they slit his throat. I know it's graphic and it's hard to, but it's not what a lot of things that they catch people doing, the undercover stuff, They shouldn't be doing it. The guys shouldn't be abusing the animals, even though they're going to be eaten. Like, that's what I don't agree with. The measures that they take to abuse it before they kill it, not acceptable. Like, even for me being a butcher, what they've done is not cool. You would never really do that, but they get caught and they pay the penalties for that too. From the chickens all the way up, like, you're not supposed to be doing all that. But yeah, there's only one way to get a chicken cutlet off of a chicken. It has to be dead, and you have to trim it off of it. That's just how it goes to eat it. There's no other way.
Yeah, but
you have to beat it up. No, there's a proper method of ways to do things. So it's not, the crazy people beating up animals and they think it's cute and fun. No, it's not. If it's done the way it's supposed to be done, end the story. But these places always get investigated because these fools are doing what they're doing. That's why. And those are the videos that everybody sees. Some of the other places, it doesn't go down like that in those manners. But they take the ones that are the worst situation and they make that the big thing. Oh, this is how they're doing it. Not all places are doing it like that. Yeah, I know for a fact. They don't all do that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that every rancher beats up their cows.
Right.
But once again, in terms of the United States, over 99% of the meat that we consume are coming from these facilities, right? So that doesn't mean that 99% of cows are getting beat up and getting their tails chopped off. But that does mean that 99% of cows, and we're talking about literally millions of cows, right?
Yeah.
Are being, held in these situations where that's possible that's going to happen to them. And even if they don't, right? The most peaceful existence of, the most peaceful life of a cow in one of these factory farms is still a life where, it never touches fresh soil, never breathes fresh air, never sees sunlight. It lives in a cage its entire life where it can't even turn around, right? So if you want to say, all right, just do things, the way you're supposed to do it, don't chop off their tails and don't beat them, right? The most I would still consider, keeping an animal confined in an extremely tight space for its entire life. I still consider that abuse, right? I consider, separating calves from their mothers directly after they're born, which is 100% normal practice. I mean, we're going into dairy as well, and I'll come back to dairy in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess we'll just go to dairy right now, right? In the dairy industry, the way that they're able to keep these cows producing milk is, all right, so when does a mammal in nature produce milk, right? It's when it has a baby, right?
Right.
I remember I was lied to when I was young. I was told that the reason that we get milk is because we need to milk these cows or else they're going to die or some undue harm is going to come to them. And that is true in a sense that once the cow is producing all this milk, it is necessary for the cow to get rid of the milk. But they left out the reason why these cows are producing all this milk in the first place, right? And that's because human beings are artificially inseminating them. And then once they have their calf, their baby, right? I mean, if you think, a mother cow does not have the same relationship to its calf as a female human has to its baby, right? On an intellectual level, obviously it's not there, but these are still mammals. You agree with me, cows and humans are way more similar than we are different. And that's a baby that you're taking away for its mother. Why? So that, some, woman in Wisconsin can, give her daughter a glass of milk or whatever, right? And so that's absolutely normal practice. Forcing cows. Having a baby. Ask any woman. That's a traumatic experience, right? So we're forcing female cows to have babies. Number one, keeping them inside their entire lives, forcing them to have babies, taking their babies away from them right after they have their baby, right? And then milking them, basically all day, every day. They're hooked up to a machine, forcing them to have a baby again, rinse and repeat 3 or 4 more times. And once this cow is no longer profitable for the company, do they give it a nice, peaceful life, just let it live out in a field? No, they ship it off to a slaughterhouse and kill it, right? So if we want to talk about, maybe not 99% of cows have their tails chopped off and yada, 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 right? It is absolutely, standard behavior to be, doing this activity that, that we're doing. And then on a related note, when we think about the egg industry, right? What type of chickens produce eggs? Right? Female chickens, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, but think about it. Is every chicken that's born female, or is half of them male, right?
Right.
What do you think that the egg industry is doing with all those male chicks that are just born, right? They're not useful for producing eggs, right? They don't need, all they need is a relatively small number of roosters in order to keep the population going, right?
Right.
And plus, we're not, we the chicken that we eat, even if you were to make the argument that is absolutely necessary for human survival that we eat chicken, right? The chicken that we eat are hens, right? We're not even eating male chickens, right? So that means half of all, chickens born, in the egg industry, they're literally killed minutes after they were born, right? Once again, we're talking about millions and millions and millions of sentient living creatures that are way more similar to us than they are different, that we're killing simply because, this dick ass CEO, isn't able to make a profit for his company using them, and so they're not worth anything. So throw them into a grinder or grass them or whatever, or gas them, get them out of my sight, right?
Right.
Would you consider that ethical, acceptable behavior, right?
Absolutely not. But right.
But that's
right.
normal. Every time you buy eggs, that's
part of the process.
You're endorsing, right? That you're endorsing with your money that, hey, I want you to keep killing millions and millions of baby chicks because I like mine sunny side up.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Would you? I mean, if you feel free to disagree.
No. What you're saying is right. It's just I accept it. It's par for the course. If I want to eat it, these are things that have to happen in order for it to happen. In order for me to eat it on my plate, these are the things that have to happen to this point. I have no attachment to the animals. And once again, this could be just selfishly said. I don't have any attachment to animals, and whatever happens before it gets to my plate, it's kind of irrelevant to me. It's not even in my mind to think of the struggle that the chicken had or the struggle that the cow had. I understand. I can understand it. I can understand it a little bit more now, thinking about how you're coming across with it. And I understand, like, very, very, intelligent the way you you put everything out there. It's not going to really change how I feel about what I'm going to eat, but I can kind of respect your decision. I mean, nobody. And I mean, when I post this up, I'm sure a lot of people are going to think the same way. Wow, he really he was very articulate with it. He really had his information. He knew what he was talking about. So I definitely give you kudos for that. Because you didn't come at it with an ignorant, oh yeah, but like how a lot of people will. They don't have enough information. They just go by what they want to fight, but they have a very small debate. Yours is very open on many levels. So which is a beautiful thing. I can converse and go back and forth with you. And me, I'm more ignorant. I like what I like, and then that's pretty much it. You know what I'm saying? I'll debate anything. I'll debate and talk in circles all day. I'm not probably going to change, but you know what I'm saying? I love a good debate or a good, situation. And I definitely really, was that?
So, I mean, if I might ask,
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, like, what would be like, would there be any sort of moral injustice that might take place that would like convince you to change like any behavior like that you have? I'm just wondering, because basically like what I see in these industries is literally the utmost sort of degree of morally unacceptable behavior, right? Because I think there are like degrees when it comes to behavior that is and is not morally acceptable, right? Certain actions, cause a little harm, certain actions cause a little more harm, certain actions don't cause harm, whatever. Basically, what I see in the production of animal products, and once again, not even touching on the astronomical environmental negative impact, just purely on the moral side of it, I am seeing the utmost echelon of moral abuses, right? Of unacceptable moral behavior, right? Causing basically as much suffering as you might be able to imagine an industry to cause. Animal agriculture is causing that amount of suffering. And so I'm just wondering, like, Like at what point would it no longer be acceptable for you to like eat meat? Like is there any, like, I'm just like, would it be possible for anything to like change your mind when it comes to this, or maybe any other behavior that you have?
I, I don't think anything's going to stop me from eating meat. I don't. I don't think. I think should I become severely ill? I know that's like, all right, I'm on my last legs type thing. Nate, you have one more piece of meat, you're done. Then it was big enough that it's affecting my body, my physical body, to that point where you know what, I do have to make change. You know, um, I think that would probably be the only thing. I mean, because but once again, I'm not to say programmed. I grew up a certain way, so this is, and then I was in the field of doing it, so it's like, yeah, well, look, I can separate it, almost how you can separate sex from love. Some people can't.
Yeah.
Some, oh no, I'm in love with her. That's just no. With sex and love are two different things.
Mhm.
So it's I can do that. Some people can't. Like and maybe it's twisted, maybe it's weird, but I don't. Whatever I eat is just it's food, it's nourishment, and that's what its purpose is. To me.
Yeah, listen, I totally understand. I grew up eating meat. I grew up loving meat as much as I'm sure you love meat, which is
Right.
it's a little astounding given how much you love it despite not being able to taste.
It's crazy.
That's kind of thought provoking in itself, but leaving that aside for a second.
It's just a texture thing, really.
Yeah, yeah, I no, listen, I understand. I definitely
Well,
understand
yeah.
that part of it, but I just think that like we have the capacity to make minor sacrifices that maybe don't seem to have any like pertinent like immediate impact,
Right.
because when I decide to eat a meal without meat rather than eating a meal with meat, it's not as if right there I just saved the life of a cow, right? Like I'm fully aware that that behavior that like I just exhibited had no effect on the life of any cow right at this moment, right? But I just think it's like for me, I think like I would find it unacceptable for myself to like engage in such behavior and promote it, like using currency,
Right.
basically speaking with my wallet, that I believe that the way in which this product was produced is acceptable, and I want to support it and I want it to continue because I enjoy its byproduct or whatever. Um, and I've just come to the calculation that no, I think that that's totally unacceptable, and I do not want to support what I see. And what you're agreeing with me is some of the utmost abuses that are taking place on this planet. I mean, literally, we're talking about billions and billions of sentient beings with the ability to suffer, with desire to live. Insofar as we accept that animals have an innate desire to live, which I don't think is unreasonable to posit. I think we can accept that. And so when you're talking about it doesn't have, like, I'm not personally connected to this animal, I have the option to purchase this burger right now, and so that's what I want to do because that's what I want to eat. Listen,
Right.
I understand it. I definitely understand that. Um, but I just think that it's sort of narrow-minded to just think of what is directly relating like to me right in this very second, right? Because for example, like there are plenty of humans that and there are way more humans that you never knew and will never meet, and will never have the opportunity to ever have any sort of connection with, right? But I I would still think that if you knew that some person, in South Korea was being tortured right now, I think that you're an empathetic and compassionate and conscious enough individual for you to still take real issue with that, right? Even though that's not affecting you in this current moment, but we can still recognize that that's an inherently bad thing. And if there is some minor behavior that you were undertaking in that would that was supporting that, I'd imagine that you would stop engaging in that behavior, right? Now maybe that seems a little disconnected because what
But
behavior.
I got you. Point
Yeah.
taken. Point taken.
So I think that even though you don't have any sort of personal connection with these cows that you're eating, that doesn't, like, that in itself has no impact on the moral worth of that cow, right? Whether Nate or Aton or any human has a personal connection with that cow is not relevant whatsoever to if that cow has moral value. What's relevant to if that cow has moral value is whether or not it has the ability to suffer, and to determine if it's acceptable to impose suffering on that being for our own well-being. Like we said earlier, we need to have to do that sort of cost benefit thing, and I think there's got to be like a really, really high standard if we're going to impose such an incredible amount of suffering on animals in order to gain some sort of benefit. And as far as I can tell, there's virtually no human being, definitely no person in America, who's gaining more benefit from these actions than the damage that is being done to these sentient living creatures. Once again, millions and millions of them who are being, like as much harm that can be caused.
Right.
Basically, is
ultimate amount of harm that you can do to anything. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, and I do remember that other point that I just wanted to mention quickly, because we were talking about. Remember, we were talking about like the price of food, right? One thing that I think it's really important when we want to sort of contextualize why veganism seems to be a lifestyle that a lot of people can't afford. The United States government, I'm not sure about other governments around the world, although I'd imagine it's true to some extent, but at
Right.
least the United States government heavily subsidizes animal agriculture, which means that the United States government is using taxpayer money, giving it to these corporations in order to help them produce this food. And so that has a direct impact on the price of these food. Like these food products, these meat products, these animal products, their prices are actually being kept artificially low because of all the money that the United States government is spending to subsidize their production. So if we were not subsidizing their production, and I'll ask you in a second if you agree that that's something we should stop doing, then that price discrepancy would actually not be so large. There may not even be one at all. I mean, in as much as we accept that there is one, which once again, I'm not exactly sure, just because once again, I think price is more about how the quality of the food rather than if it's not vegan, right? But it's not as if like the world right now and every sort of aspect of it is like just sort of the way it is and it's to be accepted. No, all of this is happening because of choices that are being made by human beings. And that means that all of these things, and you've agreed with me a lot here on all of this really, really bad stuff, right? Animal abuse is bad, damaging the environment is bad, right? It's not as if it just is what it is and we have to accept it. No, these are all derivatives of deliberate decisions being made by human beings, right? And so we have the ability to change things. One more interesting piece of information, and if you want to wrap up in a bit, then just let me know and that's fine. But one more piece of information, agriculture or animal agriculture, livestock takes up more than 38% of all habitable land on Earth, right? And so if we're talking about the effect that this industry is having just simply or on the planet, right? Imagine how much more food we would be able to grow if we weren't feeding a third of all of our cereal harvest to animals that we're then feeding the humans, right? I mean, meat production and dairy and egg production, or I guess it's different with the different products, but they take producing meat, let's just say beef, right? It takes an incredible amount of water to produce. It takes an incredible amount of sort of like input crops, because think about how much food a cow
Oh,
needs to eat for its entire life in order to get big enough where we can kill it and it'll supply a decent amount of meat, right? The cow actually ate way more food than it's ever going to provide to human beings, right? And so despite the fact that, of all of the habitable land on earth, or of all the agricultural land, right? 70% of all agricultural land, and this is around the world, is used for livestock, for meat and dairy, but only 18% of the global supply of calories, right? If we want to talk, in terms of the actual value that people are getting from from this food, it's actually only 18%. And or that's from meat and dairy. And in terms of protein, it's only 37%, right? So we're using 77% of all agricultural land, to produce 30% of the protein, right? And so if we took all that land that we were using to grow the crops that we feed cows, and all that land that we need the cows to live on, if we just stopped breeding all of these cows and actually use that land better to either restore habitats, right, or I guess to sort of stop destroying habitats, because I'm not sure how the ability that we have to restore habitats that have already been damaged, but in terms of stopping destroying habitats, like we were talking about in the Amazon rainforest, right?
Right.
We stop destroying habitats, and we use the food that we're feeding cows, feed it to humans, or grow better crops that we can then feed to humans, right? We'd have way more food to feed to humans because we're not wasting so much fucking food feeding cows, right?
You're right. I will definitely give you a two thumbs up for that. That
Yeah.
was like the fact that you got that's amazing. No one's ever broke it down like that before. I definitely give you props on that, because to feed a cow so much just so you can eat, and it'd be just less of a value of a cow than all the stuff that you've given it for X amount of time.
So that's just in terms
very
of
valid.
like the pure economic value, and like the pure value that these things are having on us. So, but yeah, sorry, continue.
Wow, that's all right. That's deep. I'm probably still gonna have a pork or egg and cheese sandwich in the morning, but
Listen, I understand. I did not, talk. I didn't come in here talking to you with the notion that I was going to change what you were going to have for breakfast. But I'm really glad that we've been able to have this conversation.
Absolutely, bro. And it just you were really very, very informative, and not ignorantly so. I mean, like, what I'm saying, your points were dead on. You were a loaded gun. Even my foolishness, you still,
Yeah. Yeah, well, I try to come prepared, because one thing that often frustrates me is, I'm sure because I'm sure you've had a bunch of conversations about a bunch of topics, is that you can really tell when basically people are out of their league, right, when talking about a specific whatever the topic is. And so it's
right.
At the very least, it's just a sign of respect, I think, that you come armed with information into a conversation that requires a lot of information to be discussed. So yeah, I wanted to make sure that I was ready, and that I wasn't just going to be wasting time out here just using rhetoric.
You accomplished it. You accomplished it, man. I definitely got to give it to you, because of all the conversations I've had on these topics like this. You've blown everybody away. Without a shadow of a doubt, you nailed it. So when I post it, I guarantee you, people are gonna be like, "Wow, that's like just many things you said that I'm like, wow, I've never even heard anybody come close to that, explaining things in that way." So that's kudos to you, man. I knew there was something about you. I knew there was something about you, my man.
Yeah.
How can people find you, bro? How can they find you?
How can you find me?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, my Instagram is private right now. May have to change to public, but yeah, you could just find me at N8than Magaliff, EITAN MAGALIFF. So I'm also on Twitter. I have 13 loyal followers right now.
As long as they're loyal.
That's right. And that's N8than LM, EITAN, letter L, letter M. And then Facebook, you can also look me up, N8than Magoo, if you know, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you should definitely shoot me a friend request. You know, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know if the podcast is going to be interested
yeah,
in friend.
definitely. I'm gonna post it on all platforms and everything.
Sure,
I
sounds
have
good. I
5,000
do,
friends on Facebook. I gotta delete somebody to get you.
gotcha. Yeah, I do actually have a little YouTube channel. I've only made one video right now about the Electoral College. But yeah, you could also find me at N8than Magoo on YouTube, and maybe I'll have some vegan content up there at some point. We'll see.
Bro, well, yeah, we'll definitely, you know what I'm saying? Whenever we gotta do more of these.
Sure. Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Listen, I'm down to talk about anything. I don't know. I was talking a little bit about how I like, speaking about like religion and how I'm atheist. I don't know, what your approach to religion is, but that's something that I really enjoy talking about. Politics. I'm super into politics. So yeah, man, I'm down to talk about anything.
Good, man. Well, bro, you got any last words?
Listen, if anybody's listening to this, my I guess sort of general sentiment is that be aware of the consequences of your actions, and I just think it's really important for everybody to make sound decisions based on reasoning and based on moral considerations. And yeah, honestly, everybody just live your best life. And I don't know. Yeah, this is the first time I'm doing this, so I don't know. Go Yankees.
You did great, man. Thanks
Cool,
for
cool.
talking, man. I appreciate it. It's
Yeah.
my boy Big E. Big N8than. I'm gonna call him Vegan E from now on.
Not good. Right.
So yeah, we'll get you some. What's that?
Nate the Great. Thanks for having me.
You got it, bro. I'm gonna catch you next time, all right?
Sounds good.
You behave yourself, bro. Go have some fun.
All right. See ya.
All right, brother. Peace.